Afia Aho, I say Namaste and Mafidifun and blessings to all the angels. Welcome to the fairy world. What's important in knowing and inviting fairies into your house? Number one, our energies have to be very clean. As fairies are nature spirits, we will begin by talking about each cardinal points. It's important to know how to set up your fairy altar in inviting fairies to your house. To begin with, it's most important to have a vegetarian diet. Try your best not to eat so much meat the day that you are welcoming fairies into your house. At least give yourself 7 days of eating many vegetables and fruits. Fairies, they complement our chakras as well. So the foods that you eat also work with your chakras. In order to build certain chakras and getting the help from fairies who help to make the fruits, as I always say, every tree has a spirit. Every flower has a fairy. In light of this, understanding that when we're eating oranges, for example, or pineapples, they are developing our solar plexus chakra, which is our stomach area, okay? So if you would like to work on your self-esteem and so forth, the solar plexus chakra with the blessing of fruit go hand in hand. So let's begin and talk about the energies of fairies. As someone who has a deep connection to fairies, and also having the confirmation and interaction and spiritual interaction with fairies, where they've actually shown themselves on my altar, and there's been many witnesses of this when I was doing a fairy gathering many years ago. There's also fairy walks and different things that we can do that involves nature. Fairies are elementals that like to work and be outside. They are the guardians of animals, fish, birds, and so forth. So when you have pets in your home, 100% guaranteed your pets have a fairy. Now, the fae spirit work in different natures in terms of human natures, some have. They can also be very angry if they see a pet being mistreated, and so forth. So if you are into other faiths that include certain things that have to do with strong energies, have your fairies separate. You can have energies for your fairies outside, as fairies do not like to belong to someone. In other words, we know that they walk with us, and we know that they can be our guardian angel, and it's in our road, if so be it. However, we have to know which energy of fairies walk with us. Some people love dolphins, okay? Some people love the ocean. That's another elemental. So let's talk about the cardinal points. In welcoming fairies into your home should have plants, they should have flowers, they should have pets, fish. For example, I have a rabbit that's running around here right now, taking advantage of this video and eating certain things around that really she shouldn't be, but we'll get into that. It's not harmful, but she shouldn't be eating it. Let's move on. Let's talk about the cardinal points and the different energies of fairies. Let's begin. Let's start off with the fire fairies. Fire fairies, for example, they love the heat and the strength. They represent passion. They represent the south, okay? They are on the south totem of the cardinal point. Okay, this is an example, and the different fairies that I'm showing you come from my fairy altar. So when I'm finished, I will put them in their correct cardinal point. So what is the cardinal point for the fire fairies? Fire fairies not only are salamanders, fire fairies are also in relation to pure fire. They work with jinn. In other words, there's a spirit called the jinn that they work with. In understanding that your fire fairy has their own cardinal points, Also, do know in looking at this, because I have to go by my studies, okay, they purify the energy. They are a masculine energy, okay? And they're a creature, there's different creatures within the Fae world where they will create or they can destroy. Fire is a very, very powerful element. So when you have your fairy altar, do not put them up under your earth fairies because the elements are completely different. When I once journeyed to my fairy world, I remember my gnome, because we all have an assigned and personal gnome, he stood back and he allowed me to greet the fire energy, but he also knew his boundary when it comes to the fire energy. Fire energies also have a lot to do with warrior and warrior-like spirits. They also helped in creating weapons and using fire to create those weapons. They are considered also as elves in the earth world, okay, in the earth fairy world. If they trust you and you don't go looking for them and you're just enjoying nature and understanding and having a spiritual eye for when a fairy comes to you, a simple wave by a leaf that goes like this, they're telling you hello. If you walk in the woods and you look at my previous videos, I will show you where there are sticks in the woods that are crossed like this. That means please stay away and please stay out, because that is their world. If you see an arch, that is okay. They're welcoming you to come through. Now, in order to also have fairies close to you, do be mindful that you cannot litter in the woods or any parts of nature of their cardinal points. They do not like it. If they see that you're helping to clean up nature and the soda can or plastic bag, anything man-made that is not yours, and you pick it up and clean it, they are watching and they will bless you with that for helping them to clean up the environment. Another understanding of this is when we get our pets. If your pet is given to you as a gift, if you save your pet from a local shelter, or if you see a pet that is downtrodden or homeless and so forth, or you find a bird whose wing is broken and you nurture that bird or that animal and so forth, you are welcoming fairies into your house. Let's continue and let's move on. As we went over fire fairies, let's talk about the energies of water fairies. Water fairies, I'm going to give you an example. As I said, I have moved certain energies from my spiritual table for the Fae. Water energies are very, very beautiful, and they guard the interesting part, the cardinal part of the West. Now, what's interesting about the West is that the west side of the cardinal point can also work with fairies of the water, but there are fairies that are hybrids. For example, some water fairies who do have wings. How did that happen? Fairies with wings also are earth fairies. Certain fairies fall in love and they end up having a connection point to one another. There are some relations within the fairy world that are taboo and others are not, as there are different races and species of fairies. In understanding that, here's a clear example of a beautiful hybrid water fairy, which I also have something similar tattooed on my back. Now, in understanding the water fairies and connecting with them and understanding the strength that they uphold, how do you get yourself closer and closer to water fairies? Do you want to meditate with mermaids? Do you want to meditate with Udines? Then what you do is you fill your bath water with sea salt, not too much. You can use a blue cube, which is called anil, or you can use a very, very natural blue food coloring. You can get this from certain dyes of blueberries and so forth. Fairies are very, very natural nature beings, so they would appreciate you connecting with them in nature. In understanding, here is another hybrid. Also, too, An invite in having fairies into your life and into your world is knowing that the energies you are connected to. So let's continue with that. For example, if you want to protect your child and you know that your child has different nightmares or night terrors, what you can do is that you can hang a fairy above their bed or somewhere in their room, and these night terrors would go away. But you have to let the fairy know exactly what you're doing. So, for example, this is a material existence. When you channel through a material existence that was deliberately created for that particular spirit and manifest within that spirit, you can call upon the fairies when you go outside to the woods. For example, I had an experience where I went into the woods and I went alone, and I started getting very nervous, and I felt like, oh my goodness, something is not right, as I started hearing cracks in the floor and branches being cracked, and I felt like I went too deep in the forest. I called on the fairies to guide me and help me to safely leave that passage as I finished my tour within myself. Now, if you feel like you're going to like a huge woods or a forest, make sure, if you want, to carry St. John's wort. St. John's wort not only works with depression, as we know naturally, but it also stops wayward fairies who don't understand your energy. It stops them from getting close to you, and it helps you to find your way out of the forest. You can make that with a mojo bag. Now let's continue in understanding different ways. I'm looking for my pearls here. So for example, to take a fairy bath or to make fairy water, you can use natural, see how natural that is, pearls. Pearls are really, really a divine subject. Pearls are manifested and already made within scallops, within clams, and different kinds of shells. So it already has the energy. Everything has to be natural when you're working with fairies. So you can put 7 pearls in your bath. You can also stay natural. You don't need Florida water for this. Stay natural. Use natural oils, okay? Natural sprays of rose, of lavender, and so forth. They absolutely love that. If you collect any sort of sand or shells from the beach, always give thanks to the fairy energy, as they are there watching over mankind. In continuum of that, there are different crystals that you can use that invite fairies into your home. So for example, as I pulled as much as I can from my table, my spiritual table, just to teach you the different energies of fairy work. Now, stay tuned for more videos in terms of working with fairies. So now stones. Stones have spirits, natural stones. Fairies are attracted to stones. If you want your yard to attract fairies, when you cut the grass, you must also warn them. But fairies love bushy, wild growing trees. If they're too pruned and too perfect, they don't really like it. But also too, you can create a fairy door. And how do you do that? You can paint a red door on a beautiful tree that you have by your house. Circular motion. You can even put fairy lights around your tree. Guarantee you will attract fairies. They absolutely love that. They do not like anything of too much metal and steel. Well, why is that? When man came about and they started finding ways to grow crops, fairies felt insulted because they were heavily relied on when we had to grow crops and trees and fruits and so forth. So this mass production of metals and stainless steel not only represent war, but it also represents, it's like a stay away for them. It represents that was the end of their rule. So what they did was they started going more deeper and deeper into nature and finding ways to hide themselves so that they can survive. Because after all, they're all still earth spirits. So do remember this. Let's go over it again. Water. Water fairies, not only being a feminine energy, but they reside in the west cardinal point of your fairy altar. Okay? Now, fire represents your south cardinal point of your fairy altar. This also is a beautiful recognition of the sign of Sagittarius, being half horse and half man. This is also the fire energy of the fairy world. Now, when you start building your fairy altar, make sure that your fairy altar, the actual table, this is not the fairy altar, this is where I do my readings. Make sure that your table is not all metal, stainless steel. It naturally should be made of wood, because that is what attracts fairies. If you cannot have it outside, at least have it by the window and give them as much nature to play with. Sand, stones. For example, I have here for you to see an amethyst tree. This amethyst tree, they absolutely love it. Amethyst is just a beautiful stone in recognition for our crown chakra, and also works with our third eye chakra. So when you want psychic intuition in terms of working with your fairies and working with different energies of angels, this is very, very important, and they would really appreciate you giving them gifts like this so that they have a place to play. So for example, I have a fairy house, and in that fairy house, I also have a tree for them so that they can fly back and forth. The fairy house that mainly resides within my house consists of different sylphs. We'll get into that in a moment, which are air fairies. Air fairies they love to be free. We don't trap fairies. We don't feel like, okay, you're my fairy, you have to stay. No, fairies are so powerful that, respectfully enough, I have a candle here, and I normally light it close to the energy of my fire fairies. They don't even need to be charged. They do not even need to be fed. They have their own energy that is electromagnetic, that is extremely powerful. They do appreciate offerings, okay? Certain offerings, which is one of their favorite, is sweet, thick milk, which is the condensed milk, okay? And also, too, they love sugar water, and they love honey and gifts of flowers. Do not overgive them gifts, because they are suspicious of us as human beings. Because the reason why is because how we treated Mother Earth, and how we pollute, and how we have oil spills and so forth. So when you're ready to approach a fairy by the tree, do know that they live there, and you want to bond with a fairy, respectfully state, I honor you and thank you, and I bless you for allowing me to connect with your tree. One particular tree that is very powerful when dealing with any guilt or any anxiety is to sit your back against a pine tree and allow all of the energies to flow through your body in meditating with the fairies. Eventually, you will begin to dream of fairies. So let's move on, as I have different energies to attract my fairies. So I say my fairies because I have certain energies here, but they're everyone's fairies. Here is a seashell, which will reside next to my water fairies, the undines. Now let's move on to the air fairies. Air fairies are very free, loving fairies. They also are in recognition of the cardinal point of the west, the east. In the cardinal point of the east, this is the direction where a lot of holy people pray. The east needs a lot of direction when we want affirmations and prayers. For those prayers to be granted, we can rely on the air fairies. They represent freedom and happiness. Another method to bring your fairies into your house is to dance, jump around, sing, play silly songs, blow bubbles, bring out your inner childhood. Not only will you be forever young within and on the outside, but also too, happy energy brings energy into your house. In understanding the importance, for example, of more of these air fairies is understanding they come in different colors, different shapes, and different sizes. Some fairies are sizes just the same size as us as humans, and some are very, very small. But I've been on fairy walks and I have seen pictures and I've actually seen actual fairies within those fairy walks. So the more you believe in them and you don't doubt it and say, well, when I'm looking at that tree, I only see a green man, or I just see a face, or I just see leaves. Use your third eye. When you use your third eye and trust in your intuition, the fairies will trust you more and they will bond with you. Too much offerings to fairies causes them to be suspicious. Now, in going over the air fairies, I have something very important to tell you. When you want to get rid of an unwanted energy, the best energy and elemental to do that for you is the elemental of the sylphs, the air fairies. Say for example, if you want to blow your troubles away, which oftentimes in readings I do recommend, you get a brown paper, you write whatever it is you want to get away, or whatever human being, or whatever. Say for example, you want sickness to go away. You write sickness go away, so mote it be. You light the paper on fire, make sure you have a bowl underneath. You take it and you blow it into the wind. They are very reliable in carrying out your wishes to carry things away. Also, too, air fairies are very intelligent. They are the fairies of wisdom. I remember journeying and traveling with air fairies, and their kingdom in that part is absolutely beautiful. And why do I say that? They're so high in the air. They have their own icons, meaning their own statues and their own saints, believe it or not, high in the sky that actually float. That it's just, the air is very thin and it's a different world when you're traveling with the sylphs. So for example, as they govern the east, for example, when they gave me permission to travel underground with the gnomes and the elves, I saw a dark city. Now this is something, it's my testimony for you to believe or not to believe. This is my testimony. There were cobblestone streets, and they also, interestingly enough, and I'm looking where I put him, they had a really large statue in the middle, but it was all made of some sort of material. It was not iron, okay? Because as I said, they shy from that, but it was a material of silver and metallic material that sat in the middle of this cobble street stone. Now, when we're talking about all these different energies and the cardinal points, this also relates to our overall being within our chakras, within our blood, within our overall self, as we are all one. So let's continue with that. We spoke about water, we spoke about air, we spoke about fire. Now, let's go on to earth, okay? Let me give an example. Earth fairies. This is an example of Earth. She has wings as a hybrid. Clearly you can see that she has a pet. She has a dog in her lap, and she is comforting this particular pet. So Earth fairies are very, very protective of our pets, and they help us here on Earth. They save our lives. They also give messages for those who are sick. When you call upon a fairy, make sure that you're serious when you do, and they will come to you. So for example, I used to sing a melody, and when I used to give, there was a certain kind of milk, like I told you, the sweet milk. I would give this, and then I would sing a song. Miraculously, my family members heard the same song being chanted. So believe it or not, once you start believing it, fairies come about. I used to say in my other videos, out in the forest, I'm with you. I see a fairy, you do too. So in looking at this and looking at this, here are other energies of earth fairies. They also mix their elements by blowing flutes and playing instruments and so forth. And they love when Christmas time comes around. This is the reason why you see so much happiness within this time. There are a lot of losses, yes, but they bring the happiness as much as they try to and they can. Even for those who have lost family members, no matter what's going on around the world, these fairies give so much love and happiness. And how is it ironic that earth fairies, who are elves and gnomes and so forth, how is it that they represent the North Pole, the North? This is the energy that there is no coincidence. So in knowing who your fairies are, for example, in most occasions, unless you know how to work with them, gnomes are outside guarding the house. Fairy gardens are absolutely beautiful. You can always contact me for a fairy reading or a fairy garden. Okay, I would love to give information on that. I also use my fairy oracle cards for pets, for people who love their dogs so much. A very good friend of mine, Sylvia, this is one of the pups that she had, but it was an actual pup. This is like a statue made of him, but it's an actual dog. And we did a lot of prayers and a lot of cleansings on her pups. And talking about that, when you have your pets, your dogs and your cats, you can do Reiki. You can even clean them with a selenite wand. Selenite wand is always governed by archangels. Archangels and angels they watch over the selenite wand, and that's how they say it's created. You must believe in order to achieve what you want. So a selenite wand always re-cleanses itself. What do? We cleanse our energy, we cleanse our aura, we cleanse ourselves, and we can put it on our fairy altar or with our trusted ancestor altar. So we don't leave selenite wands outside because mysteriously they melt because they're ready to go back to earth when the time comes. And moving right along, there are certain energies, even male energies of fairies, which I have not. Everything I've been putting here has been mainly when it comes to sylph female. So we have male energies of male fairies. Male fairies are very, very important because they carry a role of being tricksters for those who would like to burglarize your house or steal something from your house. They will automatically tell you who it is. They have the ability to become invisible and fly through your house, fly around your guests, or fly around those who try to intrude in your house. So when you start working with these male energies of fairies, some are tricksters and some are very, very powerful protectants in being guardians, I'm sorry. In moving towards this energy, if you have a child that is into ballet or into certain arts, you do know that they will carry that fairy energy, as fairies teach us not only the importance of grace, but also the importance of body, mind, and spirit. Okay, so now that I'm telling you about fairies and we're going over these different energies, do know that stones, as I was given this by a very good friend of mine that she got from Jamaica, that she went to Jamaica and got this for me, and a couple of other ones that are very, very strong that walk with spirit. This was actually pulled from her lands, Kanisha. She gave this to me as a gift. And this came from Jamaica, and I always keep this one on my boveda. These different energies are made by fairies. So lastly, I don't want to bore you in continuum. I'd like to teach you. So say, for example, you have a fairy bowl. This fairy bowl, fairy love, they love chocolate, they love glitter, and so forth. This fairy bowl is made with natural spring water. It's made with different ingredients of different oils. Then what you do is you take your flowers like this, like that, and you can take another flower and you can put it outside in the moon, and then the next day you can take a bath with it, or you simply just put it outside in the moon. Yellow and white represents air, believe it or not, is an air elemental, as we have blue for our water elementals, we have red for our fire elementals, and we have green and brown for our earth. But let's finish. What is the last cardinal point that we need to know? I gave you 4. There is one more. The last cardinal point is spirit. Spirit transcends within all of us. As I'm making this video for you, and you are watching me, and you're doing certain, whatever it is that you're doing, sitting down, eating, reading, listening, this vibrates into the universe. So this is always being heard. So our spirit is very, very important. Okay, so in knowing your different energies, do know how they connect. You can work with all of them. You could feel free to journey with me. You could feel free to journey with me in yoga, meditation, as well as fairy readings. No one can tell you how to work your spirit. Of course, we need guidance, but you. So if you come from a certain region, say for example from Cuba or Africa and so forth, you may have a various amount of fairies, which I spoke to someone, a very good friend of mine. She saw little men in a tree with no clothes, very small. There's different energies, but please be careful in how you deal with them and how you talk to them. Don't look for them. Just walk around nature. They're always in tween places. Then you can invite them into your home, because fairies always fall in love with those who take care of nature. Why? Because we are nature and they are nature. Alafia aho, I say namaste. Stay calm and love the fae. Ache.